Future Commerce is brought to you by Octane AI. Let me ask you a question. Do you want to leverage more customer data and increase your revenue at your brand? The answer should be yes and yes. And with Octane AI, every Shopify and Shopify Plus merchant can do just that. Learn about your customers and collect buyer profile data with engaging quizzes and create personalized campaigns and flows using Facebook Messenger and SMS. Octane AI has plans for any size business, and Future Commerce listeners get 10% off your first 6 months. So go sign up right now at octaneai.com/future. That's octaneai.com/future. Hello and welcome to Future Commerce, the podcast about the next generation of commerce. I'm Philip.
And I'm Brian. Today we have a very cool guest with us, Adam Siegel, founder and CEO of Recurate. Welcome, Adam.
Hi, good to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. And I was saying in the pre-show, it's Recurate made an appearance in our report that we just kicked the year off with, Vision 2021. And if you want to see our take on what Recurate is and how it plays into themes that we think that will impact the future of commerce, go get that report at futurecommerce.fm/vision. But I'm sorry, I have to plug things because I'm a podcaster. Adam, tell us about yourself. Tell us about Recurate and catch us up on what it is you do in the world.
Great. Well, and again, thank you so much for the invitation to speak with the both of you and to meet your audience as well. So I'll start with just a minute about my own background because that leads well into the vision for Recurate. What's relevant is that prior to this, I spent over 8 years at the trade association that represents the largest retailers. It's called the Retail Industry Leaders Association, or RILA, and my role was twofold. First was that I was hired in 2010 to build and then lead their first sustainability and ethical production program. And so through that, had the amazing opportunity to interact with some of the sustainability leaders from across the industry and facilitate collaborations on issues like conflict minerals, worker safety, human trafficking, as well as renewable energy production and procurement, waste reduction, recycling, supply chain efficiencies, and so many more. But then also, in 2013, just given how much was changing in the retail industry, I had the opportunity to build and then lead the association's first innovation and emerging technology function that we called at the time the RTech Center for Innovation, now the RILA's Retail Innovation Center. And through that, just was lucky enough to meet some really wonderful people, work closely with the chief innovators from across the industry and really get to know the retail tech community, from startups to accelerators to VCs. I've always been entrepreneurial. And so, after having been in that association for 8 years, I felt like now was probably the time, maybe now or never, to start something on my own. And there was a theme that was emerging over the time that I was working in that space. The theme was circular economy. And I know that both of you are really familiar with circular economy. What I saw was the growth of two business models in particular that really caught my attention. One was the rental economy. It was becoming a formidable market, but then also resale. And in particular, resale was exciting to me because if you need to buy a product, the single most sustainable product you can buy is a used product. And also, it's been growing like crazy. So that's what ultimately brought us to the concept of Recurate.
Woo. And I mean, just look at the total addressable market. It's literally every human alive. I mean, there's been 5 IPOs in the last few years alone in this space of marketplaces who have solved this by aggregating, the supply and the demand into certain verticals or certain channels. How does your solution, or how does Recurate differ from, say, a marketplace like the RealReal or Poshmark or ThreadUp?
Yeah, well, first I'll say I have so much respect for what they've done. They have proven that there is a market for secondhand products, and not only that, they've made it cool to buy secondhand because even above and beyond the RealReal, ThreadUp, Poshmark, there's other niche communities that have grown up, like StockX and Grailed and Goat,
Yep.
uh, that have proven that secondhand products in some cases even have more value than firsthand products, which to me is awesome. So Recurate's different because our goal is to bring the benefits of the resale market directly back to the brands. From my days working with brands and retailers at Reala, it was clear that they spend a whole lot of time and creative energy designing, producing, and selling products firsthand. And then after that, who knows? People use their products and then they have no idea what happens, but they certainly lose track of the customer and their use of the product. And eventually they get sucked into the third party marketplaces because there's really nowhere else to go. And so those brands and retailers are losing that customer and losing the subsequent transactions. And so our goal with Recurate is to create what we call branded resale, which is to bring the benefits of resale directly back to the brands that originally produced those products.
That's really interesting. So you just talked about ThreadUp and Poshmark and some of the others. And so you've created an owned channel, something that it's branded, it's curated, it's stewarded by the brand itself. Talk to us a little bit about the differences and the benefits, maybe, or downsides, or like just the differences between having good things go through a third party, or like maybe leaving things up to just the wild market of secondhand versus owning that channel yourself.
Yeah, well, I think about it in terms of the benefits to the sellers of products, the individuals who originally purchased the items and now want to sell them, the buyers, and of course the brand. And let me start with the brand. So first of all, the difference between what we do with Recurate relative to Poshmark, for instance, or eBay or ThreadUp, is that the resale channel is directly on the brand's website. So to be even more specific, imagine that you've purchased a blazer from a brand online sometime in the last several years. If you're no longer wearing that blazer, it's been in the back of your closet or in storage under your bed for a while, and you think maybe now is time to clean up and put some cash back in my wallet. You would go back to the brand's website where you bought it. You would log in to find your purchase history, and we add a buy or sell used button next to every item in that purchase history. So you'll find your blazer, you click sell used, you fill out a very simple form, and then your item will be listed directly on that brand's website in a new collection. They can call it the pre-loved market or whatever they would like. And so the benefits to the seller is that it's a very simple process to list your item for sale. Unlike if you were to go to a third-party marketplace, they know nothing about the product you're trying to sell, whereas we know everything about the product you're selling because we have access to the brand's original imagery, description, material, quality, original price, age of the item, etc. So we're completing the listing, maybe 80% of the listing, which means that there's really only a few additional fields that you need to complete. And then from the buyer's perspective, because, again, we are connected directly to the brand, we're able to supplement the listing with the brand's original imagery, description, etc. And so the online browsing experience is just a much better experience than what you would see on those third-party marketplaces, which are kind of a smorgasbord with, crappy imagery, poor lighting, staging, and so, our goal is to improve the experience for both the seller and the buyer.
This is such an interesting topic, because if I had to relate it back to something else that's top of mind, Brian, we're in the midst of recording a new season of Step by Step, which is really kind of dissecting the prime effect, or what our friend Chris Gosser would call the prime problem. And there's many solutions to the Amazon Prime problem. The biggest problem being is that consumers have this expectation of you and your brand. I get an email every week from Zillow that tells me how much my house is worth. I get an email once a quarter from my car dealer telling me how much they could rebuy my car back from me for. I get an email from LendingTree that tells me how much equity I have in my home and how I could tap that, and I'm leaving money on the table. Like this consumer expectation of the idea of residual value that they have in goods is moving down the funnel from large considered purchases and equity and assets that you have down to everyday items. It's the thing you consider why you buy a Peloton and not a SoulCycle, because of the residual value it will hold in the total addressable market to the resale market of how you could get rid of that when you decide you don't want to cycle for watts anymore. I'm curious if you're seeing this play out in the marketplaces. It's not just that the Real and Poshmark have discovered the market and proven it in spades, but it's that the new expectation will be that customers will expect that brands have this relationship from them. And is that what you Recurate is that the puck it's skating toward?
I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I love what you describe in your reports as the product eternal. And, from my point of view, I think about it in terms of sustainability, which is that you can produce poor quality, low performing products that last for several uses and then need to be disposed of. Or you can produce high quality, long lasting items that might have multiple owners. And the sustainability of the two, or the performance of the two, is really night and day in terms of their sustainability attributes. But yeah, I absolutely see that because consumers are looking for those higher quality items that retain their value over time. And in fact, we have conversations with brands that know it's the case with their products. In fact, one of our early adopting brands, they have a very robust buy-sell trade group on Facebook, and they're seeing that their products are being resold for 70, 80, 90% of the original value. And they've even said that they had considered raising prices given that's the case, but they wanted to be able to tell the story more holistically to their customer before they felt comfortable doing so. And so this now gives them a channel, a place to acquire that information and to tell a more holistic story.
Ooh, information, that's a word that perked my ears up. There's also a data component to this. I feel like one of the interesting things about the way that the secondhand market used to work is that you would have really no idea what happened to your product after you put it out in the wild. And so I can imagine that there's a whole new set of data that brands can gather as a result of this that will allow them to understand how their customers purchase, how they think of the product, how long they hold the product, how many uses they're getting out of that product, and then what happens afterwards is it's a completely untapped market for how to think about your products and what it means to your customers and where your brand is getting to, no less. And actually, so that's another question I have for you. So, what kinds of impacts have you seen on brand through owned channels, like secondhand channels like this?
Well, it's still early days. We're a relatively young company. We've been around for a year, but our largest brand has only been live with us for several months now. So the data is still, I'd say, too early to draw any sophisticated conclusions. But I will say that I very much agree with you about the value of the data that we're going to be getting from this resale channel. And frankly, that's one of the things I'm most excited about as well. Data about the customer and consumer behavior as it relates to a brand's products, but then also data about the products themselves, like how they're being used, failure points, opportunity to improve or enhance the quality of items. That sort of data to me is going to be extremely valuable.
Yeah, think about this. Like if a product was only able to last through like 2 sales, like you could just keep track of like number of like resale, the number of times a product of yours changes hands on your market, and like if the chain stops early, you could go dig in on that and find out why it stopped early for some products versus others. Not to
Brian's
mention,
just finding a way to cram blockchain into your solution, by the way. That's
absolutely, yes. Not to mention the ability to also. So this is an interesting question. So, is there an element of being able to control your market as well? Like, and I mean this in maybe both a good and bad way. Is there a way to sort of like set prices or provide some sort of like blue book on your products so that people are both getting fair value for the purchase and sale, but also you're making sure that you sort of have a hand in what happens to your brand's value after the product's used the first time?
Absolutely. One of the ways we describe this resale channel to brands is that it's bringing resale back under their control. And one of the things that we do when we're talking to brands, it's almost an easy sell, is to search for their brand on Poshmark or on eBay. And anyone who knows anything about branding, whether that's fashion, apparel, consumer electronics, etc., knows that the imagery, the descriptions, the way their brand is portrayed on those third parties is extremely suboptimal. It's a really poor experience, and it shines on the brand. So they want to control that experience better, make it better. I mean, is another way of describing it. They want it to be a beautifully on-brand experience, whether you're buying firsthand or secondhand. You're specifically describing pricing, and that's another thing that we've found to be a point of friction on third-party sites, because they don't know anything about the product that a seller is trying to resell, so they can't provide any sophisticated recommendations for pricing. But we know the age of the item. We know what you paid for it initially. We know what it can be sold for now, new. We have all of the information about it. We have a good sense of the demand for that product. And so based on all of those factors, we actually recommend a price to the reseller. They can ultimately choose the price they want to sell it for, but we can recommend a price and nudge them in a way that's beneficial for both them and the buyer.
I would assume that the most authoritative voice in the fair market value of a price of a used item would be the brand itself. That would be the anchor point at which all other resale markets could pin their pricing to, because I would think, I might be wrong, but I would think that the brand would understand what the market's demand would be, because they would be the origination point of where that product would come to, or would have come from. Can we talk a little bit, Adam, about the logistics of how this works? Say I'm a retailer, or I'm a brand that's looking to onboard Recurate. What does the actual logistical what's the chain that happens after a customer decides they want to sell something back to me as a brand? How did they realize the value? How does that encourage lifetime value for me as a brand? And is there like what are some of the embedded costs or potential cost impacts, or maybe impact to the bottom line that I could expect?
Right. Well, the great thing about what we're doing is that the costs to operate Recurate are extremely low. And that's because we run a peer-to-peer marketplace directly on the brand's website. So from logistics point of view, the seller sends the item directly to the new buyer. It doesn't go through the brand. It doesn't come to us. And so for that reason, we can keep costs extremely low, and this is therefore a very scalable platform. There are other branded re-commerce services in the marketplace, and I have tons of respect for them because they, really pioneered the space. But I do see the difficulty of those other services is that it's costly to run when you do have to send items back to a central facility for processing, for inspection, for photography before you're able to resell them. It's just a very costly step, and therefore it's not especially scalable.
So that leads me to my next question. So if it's peer-to-peer, how do you handle authentication, quality, experience with shipping, all that kind of stuff, and make sure that customers get a quality experience on your owned secondhand market? Right.
And that's honestly the biggest question that brands ask us before they proceed with us. And so, of course, we've put a lot of thought into it. First, I'll say this is already a very common customer behavior online. Peer-to-peer, it's not like we invented peer-to-peer marketplaces. And so, most consumers that are engaging in this already understand how it works and they're comfortable with it. That said, because we are branding it, putting it directly on brands' websites, we need to make sure that there is an especially high level of quality and authentication for the brand and the sellers and buyers to feel comfortable. So there's several things that we do to ensure quality. First is that, like I mentioned, if you're a seller, you sell by listing items directly from your purchase history. So we know that you've purchased that handbag. We know you've purchased it before you go to resell it. Whereas on eBay, you can pretend that you have anything in your closet and list it. They have no idea whether or not you've actually ever purchased that item. So that's the first check. The second is that the brand has an approval process where every listing goes through the brand, and they have information about your own purchase history, your resale history, and a number of other data points in order to gauge the trustworthiness of you as a seller. But then the one of the biggest checks is that we withhold payment to the seller until you deliver the item and the buyer confirms the condition of the item. So the buyer has to receive and then confirm the condition of the item before the seller gets paid. And actually, when we first started this program, we assumed that there would be a dispute rate on the order of 3 to 5%. But what we found now after hundreds of transactions is that it's more on the order of less than 1%.
Hey, Philip here to tell you about our newest sponsor, Octane AI. If you are on Shopify or Shopify Plus, and who isn't, am I right? Then you need what Octane AI has to offer. I am a huge fan of guided selling, and Octane AI has tools that allow you to get to know your customers on a deeper level and collect more buyer profile data. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you can use things like shop quizzes, Facebook Messenger, SMS, and opt-in tools to allow you to engage your customer more personally. so you can get on their level. More personalized campaigns and flows across all channel means more ROI. And that ROI that is driven from Octane AI is usable in other platforms with their integrations to other tools you're already using. Brands have already seen incredible results, up to 16x increase in email signups and a 28% increase in AOV. That's average order value, money in your pocket. What are you waiting for? Octane AI has plans for any sized business. Future Commerce listeners get 20% off the first 6 months when you sign up. So why don't you sign up today? Go to octaneai.com/future. Once again, that's octaneai.com/future and tell them Philip sent you. To coin Brian's phrase, so what I hear you saying is, Recurate is effectively the Shopify of creating a resale program for a brand, and it's making it unbelievably easy and incredibly attractive to set it up and launch it with people who are experts who have done this over and over again, providing all of the, not just the technology platform, because that's super important, but the whole of the consumer experience journey, which is the most important part, is providing the trust that this is something that is trustworthy and easy to engage in, but also there's a value you get by having resold the item. Like there's some sort of a value from the consumer perspective. So let's talk about consumer for a second. If I have a denim jacket, a Todd Snyder denim jacket, which has been often talked about here on this program. I'm ready to sell this jacket. I go and I go to sell it. What are some ways that the retailer provides that value to me? Are these funds that get paid directly to me in this peer-to-peer transaction? Is this a store credit situation? Give me an idea of ways that I could realize the value as a consumer.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So, as a seller, you can get paid in one of two ways. And actually, the brand is able to make the decision when we first implement with them if they want to offer both of these or only one option. So the two are what you described: store credit. And of course, every brand wants to offer store credit because that's just a great way to keep the seller within the community. And then the other is cash. What we've found is that every brand that we've launched with and every brand that we're planning to launch with is giving 100% of the sale price to the seller in store credit. So if the seller chooses to get a gift card, they're getting 100% of the sale price. You, of course, couldn't get that by going to any third-party site because they'll always take a cut of your transaction. But then with regard to cash, the brands that we're working with do tend to take between 20 and 30% of that transaction, which is in line with the third-party marketplaces.
Sure. How easy is it for me to send my stuff in? I've sold my jacket.
There it is.
Sorry, Brian. I'm just going right.
No, that's the right question.
How easy and painless is it for me?
Well, you made a point earlier on the podcast about the importance of the customer being at the center of this, and we feel the exact same way. We obsess over making the experience easier and easier and easier with everything that we do. So that already plays out with the listing process. It's really just a few clicks to list an item for resale as a seller. With regards to shipping the item, once your item sells, we automatically generate a shipping label. We email that shipping label to you, and you have 3 days to print it out, bring it to your post office, and send it on its way. So that's a pretty straightforward process. I think there's always opportunities to improve that still, for people who don't have a printer, who don't have a box, who don't want to go to the post office. So we're constantly looking for ways to improve that element of the experience. But up until this point, we haven't had any significant issues with sellers being late on their shipments, or any reasons why they couldn't ship.
Makes sense.
Apparel is a natural category, right? So what are some other verticals that you might be focusing on right now or in the near future?
So many others, and that's part of what really excites me about this, is that because it's peer to peer, we can really work with almost any product category. There's very few limits. So you're right, the early adopters were in apparel, and that's because the use case is just so obvious. I mean, it's staring them in their face every time they go to Poshmark and search for their own brands.
Sure.
But we also have early adopters in luxury footwear, premium denim, handbags, backpacks, travel gear, outdoor gear or sporting gear. We're interested in getting into kids and baby and toys for natural reasons. Consumer electronics as well. So, there's a number of categories for which we see this being very relevant.
I love that. You could even go like local with furniture at some point.
Right. The only reason why we've hesitated on furniture is, of course, the shipping of furniture is just a pain.
Right.
And expensive. So, for now, we've stayed away from that. But really, anything that's easily shippable by a consumer is a category that we're excited about.
I'm so excited about this. I think about this from again, both from the brand value and the consumer value side of things. Like eventually, and Philip hinted at this earlier, I could see brands that are engaged with Recurate creating sort of personal inventory lists for customers. And there's an element, especially with some of the brands that are focused on value, or both of the life of their after their product is used the first time, but also those value plays like even like Italic or some of those other brands where it's like not only are they offering extreme value, and they Italic and Quince and some of those show like the price of their product versus the price of their competitors, and like why you're able to save money as a result of buying direct and so on. But they also could show like the resale value after the life of the product and really show the net impact on the customer.
Yes.
I mean, I would love in the future to be able to only buy from brands that have features like this.
Yes.
Have a full track of what's available to me in my closet that I can turn into cash or change out. And then instead of even selling things piecemeal, like just set up like lots of stuff that I want to like clear out my closet or clear out my, whatever it is. Like,
Brian, have you seen his pitch deck? I feel like somewhere in the future, Adam is saying, "Hey, we've penetrated 30 to 40% of consumer brands with our program, and we know what's in everybody's closet, in their garage.
Yeah,
we have a full understanding of what those things are, and then, as Pinky said to the brain, and then we take over the world."
Yeah. I mean, in so many ways, I'll say this. If this was available at a little bit broader level, I would only buy from brands that allowed this. That's how strong I feel about this.
So that's the consumer. I think that's the coming consumer sentiment, is that this will be the strong, this is weak. It's weak link, strong link. This is the strong link with a brand that identifies on multiple levels and appeals to your sensibilities as a consumer. It's a must in the future. Adam, sorry, we forgot you were on the show.
Please keep going, and you're welcome on my sales team anytime. You got this right.
So,
there's such an interesting. Go ahead, Brian. I've done a lot of talking.
No, it's good. I was just pontificating for a minute there. So I'd love to hear like some examples of brands that you think are doing this well right now that you could point to and say, hey, like that's a really good example. I can think of like one or two right now. REI, in the outdoor goods area, they've done a good job with their sort of garage sale or their used section. Eileen
Outlet,
Fisher,
I think, is Eileen Fisher we highly credited on our 9x9 report last year as being a pioneer in this space, especially in the luxury market, for sure.
So, but I would love to hear, Adam, what you have to say about this. Who's doing it well?
Yeah, well, There's a handful of brands that keep coming up in these conversations. I have so much respect for REI, Eileen Fisher, Patagonia, of course, Arc'teryx, and a handful of others. But interestingly, it's been that same cohort for the last 5+ years.
Yes.
There really hasn't been significant growth in the branded re-commerce space because they're all using a similar model, which is that they take back every item. And so to my point earlier, it's expensive. It's expensive to do that. All of these brands are leaders, pure, genuine leaders. They care about sustainability. They care about circularity. They have high quality, long lasting products, and that's just a part of who they are as a brand. And so for that reason, they were willing to pay the price. But I do think that that for it to get beyond that initial class of brands, there really needs to be a new model that is more cost effective and more scalable for that reason.
And I think these things don't happen overnight, right? So long term, again, when I talked about consumer expectations, I started with like Zillow and and Honda and Volvo. But there's Stitch Fix is another. I'm a customer of Stitch Fix, and I get a box and an email that's every month that says, "Hey, here's the stuff that you have in your closet that you've kept over the past 2 years, and the way that they could be paired and matched with other things that you have in there." If Stitch Fix had an idea of what else I owned, how much more value could they provide for me as a consumer, and how much stickier would that be? I think that's like the real market opportunity here for Recurate, and to do that matchmaking. Brian, I think it's amazing that you could do this brand to brand today. How can you build, entire ecosystems that exist on, in the future? That's a
yeah. My brain's flying.
And I'd love to just riff for a couple of minutes on some new consumer experiences that a service like this can enable. Because as we envision what the future looks like, it's a pretty cool way to engage customers multiple times over the course of their purchase. Right now, if you think about the traditional customer behavior, the brand markets to the customer. They promote products. They heavily discount in some cases. Eventually, they land that sale, and then as best as possible, they try to follow up, usually through email and usually through additional discounts. So it feels like a very one-dimensional relationship. And what we're trying to do, really our whole goal is to enable the brand to have a more holistic relationship with that customer. And so, before a product is ever purchased, a brand can communicate that product maintains its value over time. You can imagine on the product description page, there's a description that says that this product maintains 70% of its value over 3 years on average. That, of course, changes the whole consumer's cost calculus as they're thinking about purchasing an item, especially a higher value item, similar to what you were describing earlier in this conversation about cars or houses. You think about those purchases differently because in a way they're an investment. And certain consumer products can certainly be that way as well. But then once the product is sold, we can follow up with that customer a few months afterwards to say, hey, are you no longer wearing that shirt or that denim jacket? Why don't you resell it with us? And with one click, we can bring them back. Once they sell the item, then we offer them store credit. They get 100% of that transaction in store credit. And so they continue back with the brand. And so the loyalty that we can enable through a service like this is just tremendous.
Ooh, there it is. I think you broke Brian's brain in Slack. He's like exploding right now.
Yeah, I am.
We love
Just
stuff like this. Yeah,
more
there's such
customer
an
touch
amazing.
points, more loyalty. It's all there.
It's all there. It's all there. And I think also I you wouldn't know this, Adam, but the reference to the denim jacket is that I feel like I have been groomed as a consumer. It's a thing we've been riffing on for a few years. I like sneakers because Instagram decided one day I needed to like sneakers, and I bought a denim jacket from Todd Snyder because I kept getting lead back ads, and they made it stupid easy one day, and I just broke. I clicked the one click buy with Amazon Pay, and that was it. I was done. So I've been groomed as a consumer over time. I think that there's like there are certainly negative ways and dark patterns that you can groom people in this world, especially into consumerism. Why not encourage and incentivize people to do something that's actually really good for the world? And I think that using Recurate as a platform on which to build consumer and customer loyalty and maybe even lifetime value with something that's inherently better for the planet. I love that.
It also opens up entirely new markets, because you might, if you're a brand that's a little bit further up market, you've had trouble sort of reaching a certain audience, or maybe it was a little bit more aspirational for them. You now have an entirely new market that you can go after with ads, with all of your campaigns. You can set up an entirely new channel. This is its channel unto itself.
Oh yeah.
I mean, let alone the everything it does for existing customers.
Oh yeah. Well, for sure, we see it exactly that way as well. And if we really had it our way in 5 to 10 years, our hope is that this might minimize discounting of new products, because you have products on your website at multiple price points. So discounting becomes less relevant. And also it tightens buys as well, because you can more closely understand the demand for products, both new and secondhand and third-hand and fourth-hand products, and how those products that you do buy new or sell new then go into the resale stream. And so for all those reasons, our hope is that it affects more than just the resale market itself, but the broader buying patterns of retailers and brands.
Do you think, and I mean, this might be one of those dark patterns that Philip just mentioned, but like, let's say you do end up with a product that has excess inventory, and the secondary market isn't necessarily all that strong for it. Instead of discounting, you could sort of use your secondary market, sort of, I don't know, instead of discounting new product, you could introduce it through your secondhand market.
It's the outlet mall, but for e-commerce.
It is, yeah. Instead of taking that to it's sort of the B stock sellers out there that are buying big lots to sort of unload through their channels, which really devalues your brand in so many ways. Like that's another thing that happens in many different industries, and so. So many benefits here.
Well,
go ahead, Adam.
There's excess and overstock, of course. That's a huge plague on the industry. Another major one is, of course, returns. And frankly, we see this as a great channel for returns. The way we describe it is anything that's non-new. So, you can imagine the types of returns that brands get back. If they can be resold as new, of course, it makes sense to send it through that channel first. But for products that cannot be sold as new, this now becomes the channel to offload those.
Ooh, I need the resale channel for the 5 packets of direct-to-consumer ramen I bought that I'm not going to eat, because the one that I did was not good. This is great, Adam. We'll give you the last word. This has been amazing to have you on the show, and we love it. Where can people find Recurate, and where can they sign up?
Well, first of all, again, thank you both for inviting me. You can find Recurate at recurate.com. That's curate, like curate, curate.com. Currently, we are a Shopify app. So if you're a brand and you're on Shopify, which most direct-to-consumer, up-and-coming, digitally native brands are, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to build your re-commerce program directly for you on your website with all of the benefits that we discussed earlier today.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Adam Siegel from Recurate, and give him a ring and give us a ring. We want to hear what you thought about today's show. I want to hear what you thought about our vision report, where you're going to read more about the product eternal and the circular economy. It's one of the many themes that we cover in our 70-page report that covers 10 trends across consumer and culture and technological modernity that you need to know. You can get that report at futurecommerce.fm/vision. Drop us a line at hello@futurecommerce.fm. All right. Hey, remember, the future is what we make of it. Let's shape it together for the betterment of all of us. And maybe you could do that with Recurate. Thanks for listening.